Well, good morning everybody and welcome to our book review page as we call it. And today I'm looking at the book on the stand, Stalin, The Court of the Red Tsar. Now, I've read quite a bit about Stalin in the past, but I must admit about reading this book that I learnt an awful lot about this man. And what I read and what I learned about him absolutely terrified me. Now, we did a review a while ago of one of the monsters of the 20th century, Mao Zedong. We looked at Hitler, we looked at Heydrich, I think we even mentioned Pol Pot. But I have to say that I think this man, as we say in England, takes the biscuit. Because to me, he's the daddy of them all, the mass murderer of them all. Over a career, I suppose, 35, 40 years, he was able to get a grip on Russia and use it to his own ends, mass exterminations. Now, according to this author here, absolutely wonderful research, I must say, and also he spoke Russian, so he was able to get into some of the old KGB archives and read some of the original reports, and also to talk to some of the survivors, and also to talk to some of the enforcers who helped to keep this man in power, this monster in power. He says in his book that the figures concerning this man's rule over Russia are something like this: 28 million deported, 20 million plus murdered, 18 million in the gulags. Now, we all know about Dachau, Sachsenhausen, Belsen, Ravensbrück. We all know about these places. What we don't know about is so many of these Russian gulags that didn't have names, but all had numbers. And each of the gulags had a big picture of this man in there. What I find amazing is that in this now 21st century, we're still remembering the monsters of the Third Reich, but we forget many of the monsters of this man. Right, so I move quickly because a few weeks ago was the 100th birthday of this man, Joseph Vissarionovich Dugasilevich, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. Always on the run from the secret police, the Cheka, and he had certain nom de plumes, and one of them was Koba, and can you guess what the other one was? Stalin, Man of Steel, and this is how the Cheka knew him. The author refers to the fact that whilst he was on the run, he actually murdered people. But I can find no evidence that once he took power, when Lenin died, of doing any of the brutal murders himself. Instead, he used his henchmen. And that's the whole thing about all of these people, that they very rarely dirty their own hands. It's a very long book, 575 pages. I'm going to move quickly, but what I did find in here is that he saw himself as having a sort of messianic quality. Now, don't forget this man. His mother had been the housekeeper of a Russian Orthodox priest, so he was brought up very much in the tradition of the Russian Orthodox Christendom. And of course, it seems that the priest who befriended the family and helped the mother was very quick with the hand and so forth. Instant dislike to Christianity, became an atheist, but used the Bible when it suited him. And just reading through my notes here, one of his details, he would say to people, the devil cursed the details. Interesting. He also mentions, let God help the success of our enterprise, when he launched the Great Terror against the kulaks in the Ukraine, when the terrible famines came. Let God help the success of our enterprise. He also studied for the priesthood, which was very, very interesting. He used the Trinity as well, seeing himself perhaps having the three roles for himself. And also when he met Churchill and the American president, he referred to them as the Trinity. I want to move on quickly now, if I may. Time moves on, and I want to get some biblical parallel here. So James can come in now. The excellent thing about this book is the photographs. I've never had a book like this that has, let me see, how many photographs? 63 photographs. Absolutely amazing. There's the monster there with his daughter Svetlana. He turns against her later, and she turns against him. So I move along quickly here. Here's his first wife. Committed suicide. Very strange death that. Never really got over it, but I think she found a bit too much to live with. Excellent photographs here. There you see the man carrying Svetlana. There he is in his car, his Buick. He thought the world of that Buick. There's the grinning monster there, surrounded by sycophants there. And there he is there. But I move on now to some of the pictures that I've showed at because I want to say something. Now, each of these men, whoever they are, cannot do all of this on their own. And here are three of the clowns, as you see here. The author says, like three boulevarders in the sun. These three criminal clowns, Mikhail, Beria, and Klim Voroslav. between them, signed hundreds of thousands of orders to take people off to the camps, to torture in the Lubyanka and so forth. And they signed it against family, friends and so forth. The three grinning clowns. And here's two of the men who helped him most of all here. Beria, Lavrenti Beria, one always there when Stalin was there, and his protege. Here you can see him there, Yezhov. Now Yezhov was a Stalin favourite, but he was soon deposed by this man, and he was executed. There you see him grinning there. All of them there at the behest of the master. And the amazing thing about all of these men, that they all lived in the same Tsar palace. Isn't that amazing? They all went on holiday together. It seems all their children played together, and all of the merry wives of Moscow swapped recipes. Here's an interesting face here of James' companion, Molotov. Molotov, the foreign minister. Coming up there, you see, there's Beria. But Molotov, when he used to go on his travels, wrote very long love letters to his wife, Polina. He didn't like it because she had Jewish ancestry and he thought she was plotting against him. So he authorized this man to arrest this man's wife, and she was sent off. And he signed the order. Isn't that amazing? Molotov signed the order. Now, friends, I can't find any information in my studies of the Third Reich of Hitler having Goering's wife arrested, Heydrich's wife arrested, Himmler's wife, Ribbentrop, any of them. But this man had all the wives arrested, as many as he could. And then he called them in. He said, do you have any problem with this? Because this is the whole thing about Marxist-Leninism. Everything is given to the state. The state owns you. And in his world, he's the state. He owns everything you do. In return, you have money, you have rubles, you have country houses, you have all of these things. But this man calls the shots. Let's look at some more pictures before we move on. Ah, there's an interesting there. 1945. There you see him arriving. Stalin ill with a series of minor strokes. Two of his henchmen following him there. Turn the page. Another picture there. And here's the merry gentleman of Moscow. Molotov, Beria, Georgy Malenkov, like the white suit, roly-poly they used to call him. Khrushchev, who deposed him, and he took power. Mikhail, this man was particularly interested in the Christians, religious, anything in the Soviet Union. He rounded them all up. Khrushchev nearly brought us the Third World War. And here you see them all again. Beria again, Mikhail, Malenkov. All of these men following the monster, and he's plotting again to get rid of them all. Now, as I said before, and there's the last picture, there's a picture there of the monster himself, probably taken in the 30s. And as you see the commentary here, Stalin in the 1927, unshaven, pockmarked, sardonic, sarcastic and utterly vigilant, the supreme politician, the messianic, there's that word again, egotist, fanatical, Marxist, the mass murderer. Now, friends, none of these men can survive by building this mass concentration camp without the help of all these other people. And I would say that in this ministry, as I said before, we are in end times. So how is the Antichrist going to do it when he comes in? Because he's a prototype of the Antichrist, a template. How's he going to do it? Can I go into Matthew's Gospel? Matthew 4. You remember when the Lord is taken up, and I want to quote our Lord's words here because they're far more important than what this man ever said. He's burning in hell now with all his henchmen. Jesus, do you remember, was taken up into the mountain and he was tempted, and the devil tried all sorts of ways to get him to succumb. Do you remember this says, again the devil take them up into an exceeding high mountain, interesting, exceeding high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. Now the kingdoms of the world are all the principalities, the countries that you live in, the governments and so forth. And he said unto him, all of these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Jesus does not rebuke him. He says, you haven't got that kingdom, you haven't got that prime minister in your pocket, you haven't got this president. All of this world belongs to the prince of the power of this world, and it's Satan. And when the Antichrist comes, he's going to use your president to enforce his views against the Christians who are still here. Remember, the true church will have been taken out in the rapture, but there will still be people here, still born again Christians, and he will use your attorney general, your prime minister, your head of the army, and so forth. And Jesus does not rebuke him. Rather, he says, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. And that's what all of these men forget. Hitler, Himmler, Tito, Pol Pot, all of them. They are monsters of the worst kind. The Antichrist is coming. He's going to need people. Next time, folks, we'll be looking at something a little bit more relevant. There's the book we're going to be looking at. And I'm going to put a theory forward why I think this beautiful city of Paris was not bombed and why I begin to think that it was the cradle of the New World Order. So from this ministry, from Stalin to Paris, Maranatha from James and myself, talk soon.